if you have anxiety, if you deal with anxiety, often can think that anxiety is just because of our thoughts. We have negative thoughts and then we're anxious. And while, yes, this is true, anxiety doesn't actually originate in the mind. And this was a game changer for me. We're back, baby, with a brand new season of the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. Join us each week as we have unfiltered conversations about how to transform your life. Our mission is to usher in a new era of spirituality where you don't have to be all love and light to live a life of alignment. Here, we honor all of it, the profound and the profane, the magic and the messy, and all things that make you human. So let's discuss the truth behind transformation and be unapologetic in our evolution. From manifestation to money, embodiment to energy, and all taboo topics, nothing is going to be off limits. Are you ready to live a life that feels just as good as it looks? Let's get fucking spiritual. Hey, what's up, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. So today we're going to talk about a much requested episode, and this is something that I imagine many of you deal with, especially if you clicked on the episode, and that is the topic of anxiety. If you are anything like me, you have dealt with lots of anxiety in your life, and I am certainly no stranger to it. And today on this episode, we're going to keep it short and sweet, but I hope that you walk away feeling more empowered, feeling a better understanding of your anxiety, and have some more practical tools, tips, and tricks that maybe you wouldn't typically think of to help you to heal this in your life and to overcome it and manage the stress and overwhelm of your daily life. I am someone who I think I came out of the womb anxious, truly. I dealt with anxiety as a child and very much was just a very high-strung kid. And I do think that there are like generational things within that and epigenetic things that are passed down that could maybe predispose us to having a little bit more anxiety or having a more calmer disposition. And I also think that it's definitely things that happen in our very early years, even if we had the most wonderful parents, that really can set our body and our nervous system up to be wired in a certain way. So if you could be wired for anxiety, that certainly was me. And I spent many, many years living in my head, and it's something that I still manage to this day. And I wanted to share with you some tips about what I do in my life and where anxiety actually comes from, because this changed my life when I learned about it. So if you're somebody that has had anxious tendencies, okay, you've had anxious tendencies, you've had maybe chronically stressed, overwhelmed, or you notice that it's circumstantial. So your anxiety is circumstantial. Maybe you feel really chill in your job, or you have a high ability to manage stress in your job, but then all of a sudden, every time that you date, your anxiety spikes through the roof and you end up self-sabotaging in a certain way. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe, you have a really solid relationship, but when it comes to allowing yourself to be seen or being in big social groups or in building your online business or whatever that is for you, you notice that your anxiety spikes then and you ruminate, right? And you notice that you go into your head and you go into the mind and you're constantly thinking and overthinking. And maybe you have another inner critic that comes out that's like, oh, why are you anxious? Or as I'm sharing this with you, begin to notice what is the pattern that comes up for you. And when do you notice your anxiety spike? Is it a certain time of day? Is it after you speak to certain people? Is it in certain circumstances? Is it just a general hum throughout the day? Starting to just get acquainted with your anxiety and when it shows up and starting to have an awareness around what could cause it There can also be many biological factors and things like not getting enough sleep. And we know this, right? Like, I'm not telling you anything new. Not getting enough sleep, not eating enough protein, not having the right vitamins and minerals, and having deficiencies in your body all can create anxiety, which also has been a journey of mine that I've been on and still am on to this day, of like making sure biologically my body is working correctly and I'm getting all of the right things and nutrients and hitting the right markers to support me in that. But I want to talk about a little bit more about like what the mindset world says about anxiety, because I actually kind of think it's a little bit invalidating. So in the standard self-development space or manifestation spaces, it's like, change your thoughts, change your vibration, raise your vibration, right? And you're like, Susan, I've been trying to raise my vibration and I still have anxiety. Why am I still ruminating? I'm trying. I know that I shouldn't be. And then it goes into this cycle of beating yourself up, and it's a whole thing, right? If you feel deeply connected to this episode, if you are ready to step into the expanded version of you, if you are ready to learn how to reparent your inner child and repattern the ways that you show up in the world, I'm so excited to officially announce and invite you to my upcoming in-person retreat in Austin, Texas, in August 22nd to 26th. There are 2 different style tickets with 2 very different price points. So I really tried to cater to everyone to make it accessible for you to come. Check it out in the show notes. We have a VIP that comes, stays in the house, has all meals included. We're all staying together. And then there's also an immersion style where you come to the location every single day. And I cannot wait to be in person with all of you, to get to heal together. There's so much that you can do and collapse time when you are held in sisterhood for 3 to 4 days, and allow yourself the space and time to really go into your inner wounding, go into your blocks, go into the things that are holding you back, and learn to actually somatically repattern them in your nervous system. That is what we are going to be doing at this retreat, so that you can plug back into the true you of who you really are and leave as the expanded woman that you know that you were meant to be. And it's called the Expanded Women Retreat. I didn't say that. But anyway, if you are feeling called to join us, tickets officially went live. So go check that out in the show notes. And hopefully I will get to meet you and give you a huge hug in August. If you resonate with that, I want to offer you a different perspective. If you have anxiety, if you deal with anxiety, often can think that anxiety is just because of our thoughts. We have negative thoughts and then we're anxious. And while, yes, this is true, anxiety doesn't actually originate in the mind. And this was a game changer for me. Anxiety doesn't originate in the mind, it originates in the body. And so what's actually often happening is that the body, this is all happening unconsciously, and it's happening at a micro millisecond and so quickly. You're not even realizing it, and you're thinking that you're just thinking anxious thoughts, and why am I ruminating? And I always have to call a friend, and I always have to talk about it, and then I have to journal about it. And the more I journal about it, you're literally ruminating on the thing and perpetuating it, because you're not actually processing the emotions, and your body is stuck in a state of fight or flight. And it's dysregulated. So what's actually happening is you have a chronically dysregulated nervous system, and something happens, the trigger happens, whatever you identified when I asked you that question. The trigger happens, the spike happens in the body, and then all of a sudden, the body informs the mind. So the body's dysregulated nervous system state actually is giving your mind thoughts and causing you to ruminate. So you're sitting here thinking that you have a mindset issue or an anxiety that is originating in the mind, and if only you could change your thoughts, but you're not actually changing your body state. So this was a really big game changer for me. And I'm just talking off the cuff to you right now, But it was a huge game changer for me when I learned that, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here trying to journal myself out of my anxiety, trying to talk to my friends out of my anxiety. And there's a time and a place for those things, right? But I was constantly in the story, thinking that I was processing the emotion, when in reality, I was just staying stuck in the emotion because I was just retelling the story and ruminating on it over and over and over, and my body was staying in a dysregulated state. So instead, shift to starting to regulate your nervous system. You're getting into your breath, through starting to bring your mind into the present awareness, noticing your body sensations, feeling the fear that's underneath the anxiety, because the anxiety is typically a Band-Aid for what we don't want to feel that's underneath. So what are you avoiding feeling by ruminating in the story? What is the fear that's underneath there? Starting to get acquainted with that part of you. And there's so many different tools and techniques and ways that you can regulate your nervous system. And I'm going to be teaching them in my free upcoming workshop called Regulate, July 16th to 18th. So join us. But truly, if you get connected to your breath, to movement, or making sound. So literally, or like making sound out loud is a really big regulator for your vagus nerve, which controls the regulation of your nervous system. Or moving your body, physically shaking, physically moving, changing your state, jumping up and down, shaking, dropping your heels on the ground. I'm not going to give you like all of the different things that you can do. You could literally even Google these if you wanted to. There's so many ways to regulate your nervous system, but literally changing your state. I'm not saying it's going to fix the problem completely. I'm not saying that it's going to fix all of the anxiety, but it'll bring your nervous system and your body, it will down-regulate it out of a state of fight or flight that keeps you really deeply ruminating in the anxiety. And when you are more regulated, you can actually respond from a more level-headed place that won't keep you inside of that loop. This was such an aha moment for me because I realized I was trying to manage my anxiety in the mind. And you can't manage an issue where it originated, right? Like you can't, if you're being stuck in the mind and you're like, I'm trying to get out of my mind, you have to go to the source, and the source is in the body. Briefly interrupting this podcast episode to invite you to join me in my upcoming free 3-day nervous system regulation workshop called Regulate, this upcoming July 16th to 18th. If you are someone who is ready to feel let up and alive and grounded and free in your body, it starts by learning how to regulate your nervous system. If you've been listening to this podcast or any of the other episodes and thinking to yourself, this is me, I promise you, the foundation for every single thing that you want in your life is learning how to get out of your head, into your body, and learning how to regulate your emotions so that you can show up as a fully expanded version of yourself. So I invite you to join us this upcoming July 16th to 18th for Regulate. Look in the show notes and all of the info will be there for you to join. Now back to the episode. So I hope that gives you a little nugget of wisdom today and maybe hopefully helps you have a bit of an aha moment with your anxiety. Is if you want something to shift, you have to do something that you've never done. And if you notice that you've always managed your anxiety in a specific way and it's not really actually managing it, I invite you to try this. I invite you to do something different, to go into your body, to regulate your nervous system, to shift your state. Because that's really all that it's asking of us. I'll tell you guys a story. I still get anxiety sometimes and I have to catch myself and I have to go into realizing, oh, wait, I'm in the rumination. I'm in the story. Okay, I get to shift my state right now. And I had anxiety about a certain circumstance in my life a few weeks ago, and I was really in the story. Oh my gosh, I'm really ruminating about it, calling my friends about it. I know when I'm like really calling my friends about it, and I'm like really wanting to receive insight from people outside of myself. I'm like, oh, I'm in an old pattern. I'm in an old pattern of seeking answers outside of myself, not actually getting connected to the truth that is within me. And there's always a time and place for that, right? We get to lean on community. We get to lean on friends that we trust. And when we notice that that's a loop and a habitual pattern, it's a beautiful thing to notice. And I was in that pattern a couple weeks ago. And I literally changed my state through doing some somatic breathwork, breathing practices. And all of a sudden I feel lit up and alive. And I was like, oh, honestly, I really trust that it's all going to work out. And I think it's going to be totally fine. Like completely different. And then I would notice I would maybe go into it again. I'm like, oh, there's my state, right? Because that's the thing is the nervous system has a habitual pattern, and we get to work with that pattern, have the awareness around it, learn how to shift it, work with the parts of ourselves that come up within it and shift our state. We might have to do that over and over again until the new pattern becomes a habitual response. And you might have it on lock in one area of your life, and in another area of your life, it might still be challenging. And that's certainly been the case for me. So I hope that this episode is a little nugget of wisdom for you and helps you to realize that you're not broken, you're not wrong, you're not alone, you're not doomed. And it's just that you haven't been given the actual right tools to be able to go to the bottom of what is causing your anxiety, and also to be able to shift your state through the body in order to move through it. So I hope that this was helpful for you. If it was, I invite you to share this episode with a friend or share it on Instagram and tag me and DM me and let me know what you got out of the episode. And if you loved it, I highly recommend that you join us for the free 3-day nervous system regulation workshop this upcoming July 16th to 18th. Go in the show notes. The link is there. And yeah, I'm really excited and hope to see you there. And I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. I am so glad that you're here. And if this episode resonated with you, I invite you to share this with a friend that you feel needs to hear it. And if you are really feeling the love and support for this show, this podcast thrives off of your listens and your reviews. So I would love if you could leave us an honest review. We would love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, your questions, and it helps us get this podcast in the hands of more people and would mean so much to me to receive your support. So thank you.